interactive discussion, but I was asked first to talk a little bit about corporate innovation, because contrary to many people in this room who are doing wonderful innovation and working for startups and so on, I actually work for large corporations. That's why I've got grey hair. And around topics like digital transformation and innovation. And the things that always surprise me is like, why is it so hard, right, for corporates to innovate when we've never lived in a world where there's so many opportunities, mainly through digital tools nowadays, to innovate in everything possible, not just product and services, but experience, production, go-to-market and everything. So we've got a huge amount of opportunities, huge amount of technology coming on, and yet I'm seeing all these large clients just struggling to do that. So why is that? Is a question that is important, and the punchline I'll give you right now is I think we need to change the way that you guys work with large corporations in general to really crack that problem. But corporations were designed, or large corporations at least, were designed some 96 years ago in a very closed system, right? It was a military type of organization, top-down, command and control and all this kind of stuff. And in those days, innovation was a very closed system, right? It was mainly driven through R&D, so people producing widgets, and then other people trying to produce them, mass produce them, and then another bunch of people marketing them. So it was kind of easy. And then the world changed, right? Everything became open. We had a lot more ecosystem, or whatever buzzword we used to, you had to connect to the outside. There was this great book came out some 15 years ago, Open Innovation from Cheeseborough. So nothing of that is new. So we live in a world where you cannot just do it all yourself. You have to connect with other people. And yet, organizations are still struggling, despite the fact that they've all read the book. They all know about open innovation. They all want to be innovative. And they're still struggling. So what do I see as the main issue, or what have I seen with my clients? I think the first one is really, I would call it strategy with a small s, we have corporations that have got great growth ambitions of the kind of, we're going to get another 1 billion customers, or we're going to grow and double our revenue and all this kind of stuff that we hear regularly, but they find it really hard to connect this with their innovation systems. Okay. And part of the problem is just a basic strategy problem. The other part of the problem is that who owns innovation within a corporation? I find two models. There's at the extreme. It's got no one, which is very often the case, or plenty of people. This is where you find a head of innovation in R&D, a head of innovation in marketing, a head of innovation under the CTO. So you've got like 7 different people looking at innovation in slices. And the problem, as I mentioned, is innovation is a very systemic thing when you have to look at things from ideation to pre-production, to production, build, scale, deploy, and all this kind of stuff. And unless you look at it that way for a large corporation, it's very, very hard to make money out of it. The second thing I think so the first problem, strategy, and to some extent the governance systems that we put around innovation. Second problem is that not all innovation is innovation. There are different types. Whether you're looking, corporations generally are becoming pretty good at what I call Horizon 1, which is like new product and services extension of what they're doing. So if you have a liquor with lemon flavor, then you do a strawberry flavor, right? That's innovation, but it's kind of an extension of what you're already doing, and corporations are pretty good at that. At the other end, you have the crazy stuff, right? Oh, we need to really think about the future. This is things that we're going to be disrupted by some people in California with a garage and 2 dogs or something, and therefore we got to react and really understand what's happening in the future. So what do people do? They tend to open an innovation center in California, right? So you get some seed money, and off you go in California opening your innovation center, and nobody has a clue how this is going to produce value for the firm over time. Why? Because usually what this scheme do is they give you permission, but they don't give you a mandate. So you have a permission to play, basically, with a little money. Same for seed money. We see a lot of these things going on, but you never get the mandate to actually bring it back into the organization. So over time, you become actually quite isolated. So you're kind of the cool guy or lady in California with a small team looking at crazy stuff, and it never kind of gets back into the bulk of the organization so we can scale it properly and make money out of it. And there are thousands of, I don't want to be facetious about innovation centers because some of them work really well, but you know what I mean. There's a proliferation. It's kind of sexy to have an innovation center in California or in Shanghai or Tel Aviv or wherever. And then the question becomes, well, okay, but how much, what's the ROI, or how much are we actually producing? So that's innovation 3. So we've got that. And innovation 2 is also very difficult, is when you look across your silos, functions, business units, brands, and you try to find innovation that cuts across, because that's really valuable, right? If you can deploy an innovation across all your business unit, or at least the bulk of your business units, it becomes really, really valuable to do that. And that is very, very hard to do in a large organization, because it involves coordination and sharing, which are not two traits that are common to large organizations, right? So you need to put a mechanism in place to do that. And the reason I'm saying that on the horizon is that it really is important, because you see horizon obviously are based on time, but not always. So I've seen cases recently in insurance where something that was horizon 3, so longer term, 5 years and above, suddenly became horizon 1 because somebody came into the market with a brand new proposition. So you have to be fairly agile in moving your innovation across the corporation that way. So what's the solution for a large corporation? I think 3 things. We need to really fundamentally reinvent the way that large corporations go about innovating. And it starts at the top. Some of my clients are getting wonderful advice from a whole pile of people saying, you should look like Google, or you should act like a startup, or you should be more agile, or all this kind of stuff. That is BS, right? Okay, you're not going to get a 300,000 corporation to look like a startup. They don't. I can tell you from the inside or from the outside. Okay, and there never will be. So I think we have to find a mechanism by which this corporation can get innovation in motion. It starts at the top. So most of the clients that we see, we had a discussion with Kat about trying to take notes on who do we think do that well. So we won't tell you the results, but we have some names. Every time that you look at somebody that is really making headway in that thing, meaning they have 30 or 40% of their sales starting to come from recent innovation, it's because at the top of the organization, somebody understands that it is essential to growth. So they've reconnected their growth plan to their innovation structure. And then the second thing that's really important, so top-down drive is really important. The second thing that's really important is capabilities, because you do need to have capabilities. I mean, I have clients that have got thousands of ideas but can't do anything with them, and I have clients that have got 0 ideas but great processes to develop. So you have to fill that in. And actually, it's not that hard. The ID part, for me, is like the easiest thing on the planet. There are plenty of ideas around. And if you don't have ideas, you can outsource it to plenty of firms, plenty in New York, that will really help you to develop that. The problem is then, how do you put it through the machine, the actual testing, the proof of concept, if that's what you want to do, the production, the pre-production, the scaling. I mean, generally firms are not very good at scaling, even if they found something that works really well. Scaling it globally is a really tough thing. So working this architecture, what I call the innovation architecture, so reconnecting your growth plan to the horizons and to the different methods that you have to actually do that, whether it's an incubator, whether it's an innovation center, and then starting to make sense, and then try to measure and KPI the thing very differently, because an horizon 3 crazy idea over the next 10 years is not going to be measured the same way that a product extension, and yet you'll be amazed how often people actually measure their innovation the same way. So this architecture is really essential. And then the last thing is really about how do you reconnect to the innovation ecosystem, i.e. the startups, all the stuff that's happening here in New York or in San Francisco or in Tel Aviv or in Shanghai or wherever. How do you connect to that? And I think there we have to really change the way that it doesn't happen naturally for a big firm. So everyone talks to startups because it's really sexy to do that and it's fun, okay? But then when you start actually working with startups, it works really, really, really well up until they introduce you to their legal team, okay? Or their risk and compliance team, okay? And then you hit a roadblock. So corporations need to build a recipient for that to happen, and it's more than just an incubator. It's actually connecting processes that allow you to actually test your data with real data, okay? Without having to sign a $10 million legal case at the back end of it if you disclose the data. So all these things can be done. It's been done, and it's going to change, I think, fundamentally the relationship that we have, that large corporations have with people like you in startups.
Thank you. And
I'll shut up.
You're awesome on timing. It's
It's easy because it tells me.
Yeah.
I know when to shut up.